Hello, scholars. This is Miss Hart. I just wanted to lead with that. I'm so excited to be your teacher this year, but I did want to cover some things that we've gone over for the past week. We've been talking about scale drawings, we've been talking about scale copies, and we just recently had a unit test. We should all be proud that we tried our very best. But there were a few things and trending errors that I noticed, and I wanted to go over them now. Just give me a second. And so the first thing is around being able to mark up a question. And so this question should look, very familiar because this is the question that was on your test. And so the first thing that Ms. Hart is going to do is read the question, and this is how I want you to move forward with doing all of your work. And so the question reads, here is a polygon. Draw a scale copy of the polygon using a scale factor of 1/2. So now that I've read it, I'm going to go back to the problem, but this time I'm going to pick up my pen and, well, in your case, your pencil, and I'm going to mark it up. I'm going to mark up polygon because I know a polygon is a figure that has more than what? More than one side. I'm also going to box or bracket rather what it is they're asking me to do. And I'm going to circle this number because it's very important. I'm also going to underline scale factor because that is what I'm going to be using to redraw this figure. The first thing that I need to do is I need to count the units in terms of every direction that this figure is going in order for me to be able to duplicate this image and understanding that it has a scale factor of 1/2. 1/2 is less than 1, right? So I know that my figure is not going to be larger than this image. I know that it's going to be smaller. So there's something that I can annotate here. I can just put smaller. Just so that I know that if my image is not smaller than the image that is here, then I have not done this correctly. So let me count my units. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Beautiful. So I can just mark this as 6 going down. Then I come this way. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 across. And then coming in this direction, which many of us skipped, there's going to be 2 going down. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 here. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Once again, there's 4 here. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 8 across here. If I'm scaling this image down by half, right, or I'm multiplying by half, remember scale factor is multiplying by half, Miss Hart told us that that is the same thing as saying that we're dividing by 2. So dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal of 2. So I'll write over here somewhere so you can have an idea of what this looks like. So if I'm dividing by 2, I can say, or I'm going to multiply by 1/2. If I'm dividing by 3, I can say, or I'm multiplying by 1/3, and so on and so forth. But if these two things are the same, then my figure, again has to be smaller. So if this is 6, right, and I'm multiplying by half, which is also the same as dividing by 2, this should go or shrink by 1/2, right? So if this is 6, if I have $6 and I want to split it between myself and a friend, I'm not going to walk away with more than what I originally had. I'm going to walk away with less or half of that, right? And that's going to be 3. So I should count 3 going down. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, ignore this because that shouldn't be there. I apologize. So this should be 1, 2, 3. All right, going across should be 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Coming down, that was 4 here. So this should be 2 going down. And then right underneath that was also 4. So that's also going to be 2 going across. And then when I come down, before it was 2, so now it's going to be 1. And then going across was 4, right? Right here was 4. So it's going to be 4 across. I mean, sorry, that was my mistake. It's not going to be 4 across. It's actually going to be 2. Because if it stayed the same, then the image is not scaled. So there should be 2. This should be 1. This should be 2. This should be 2. This should be 4. And then this should be 3, which allows me to understand that, again, first and foremost, I made all of these different annotations on my paper to allow me to visually understand what is happening to this image before I do any work. First things first, I'm saying a scale factor of half, right? If it's less than 1, I'm acknowledging that I did divide at some point, right? Which is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal of a half. So it's the same thing as dividing by 2, which is what I notated here. This image has to be smaller than this image. And now I'm looking at everything, counting it up every direction. So I didn't leave this out because this is also a direction. I'm going 2 units down. I cannot forget this. This is very important. All right. Please make sure that you first mark up the question. Well, actually, before you mark it up, you need to read it to internalize what it is you're being asked. Then you need to go back and read it again, but this time with your pencil or pen in hand, preferably a pencil, and you need to mark it up. The next thing you need to do is to label, right, the units of each side. What are the units on each side? And then what is happening to my image? I want to make sure that I'm keeping that in mind as I proceed to draw the figure. The next question that I noticed that we had some difficulties with is going to be the question around here, right? Question problem number 5. So right now, Ms. Hart is only going to address 2 questions. I want us to be able to digest these 2 questions and then put them into practice, right? So the question read, the scale factor of a map, noticing that I'm doing the same thing I'm reading, I'm not annotating right now, of a map says that 4 centimeters represents 5 kilometers or kilometers, however you want to say it. What distance on the map in centimeters represents an actual distance of 4 kilometers? The second question reads, what is the actual number of kilometers that is represented by 5 centimeters on the map? So this is a 2-part question, right? I am going to go back and I'm going to read this again, and I'm going to internalize it, but this time I'm going to mark it up accordingly. So the scale of a map, it says that 4 centimeters, I'm underlining the units and circling the numbers, represents 4 kilometers. What distance, that's a question. That's what I'm being asked to understand. What distance on the map in centimeters represents an actual distance of 4 kilometers? I've been given a lot of information at this very point in time, and I know that it can be confusing. So for me, if I need to, most of the time, Ms. Hart is going to create a known and unknown chart. What do I know? I know that the scale is equal to 4 centimeters to 5 kilometers. I know that the actual is equal to 4 kilometers. And then I know that, well, actually, I don't know, but I do know that I'm looking for, let me read this again. What is the distance on the map in centimeters that represents an actual? So if I've been given the actual, I know that I'm trying to figure out what the distance on the map is in centimeters. Centimeters is smaller than kilometers. So I know if I've been given the actual that I'm looking for the drawing. So I need to find the drawing. I don't know what that is. Sorry, I apologize. Move this over. So first things first, let me set up my scale, right? I first have to identify the scale. and it's been given to me. And I also have noted that inside of my known chart, right? So the scale, we always set it up as a fraction, is 4 centimeters to every 5 kilometers. I'm creating a proportion because I know that I've been given the scale. And then I also know that I've been given a number that's going to allow me from there to figure out what would be the equivalent in centimeters in the other fraction, right? And so now I have 4 kilometers. And in most instances, we get stuck here, right? I'm putting kilometers here because this represents the actual and this represents the drawing. Notice how I've even annotated that, right? Actual is going to go with actual, drawing is going to go with drawing. So I know that I had 5 kilometers for every 4 centimeters. I've been given 4 kilometers. The question now is, how do I get from 5 to 4? Something looks really odd here, right? I am going from a larger number to a smaller number, which means that whatever I'm multiplying this number by has to be smaller than 1, right? It can't be greater than 1 because 5 times 1 is 5. How do I figure out what it is I'm going to multiply by 5 to get to 4? I'm going to work backwards. I'm going to take 4 and I'm going to divide it by 5. I'm not going to take 5 and divide it by 4 because that is going to give me a number that's greater than 1. I know that if I'm going from a larger to smaller number, this number that's being multiplied by 5 has to be, it must be less than 1. So when I do 4 divided by 5, I get 0.8. Whatever I multiply at the bottom, I'm going to multiply at the top. When I do 0.8 times 4, I get 3.2. I'm not going to just leave 3.2 just by itself, right? Just sitting there all alone. I'm going to add my units. And this is the equivalent on the map to what 4 kilometers would be in actuality. I'm finished here. Now moving on to part 2. Part 2, it's the same exact thing, right? The only difference is I'm going to read question 2. It says, what is the actual number of kilometers? No longer am I looking for centimeters, right? Here I was looking for centimeters. Now I'm looking for kilometers. That is represented by 5 centimeters on the map. Bracketing the question because this is what it's asking me to do. Same concept. I'm going to create my known and unknown key. Same scale. They didn't tell me anything different. They didn't tell me that the scale is changing. So now I'm going to keep that the scale is 4 centimeters to 5 kilometers. I also know that now I don't have the actual. I have 5 centimeters, which is the scale. Or the drawing, I'm sorry. I don't want to use the same word. It's the drawing. And now I know that I'm looking for the actual because I read the problem, right? And so now I'm going to use the same scale because the scale stays the same in this particular problem. I have to be careful because I was not given a second scale. I'm going to reuse this scale here. So now I have 4 centimeters for every 5 kilometers. This time I was given 5 centimeters, right? I underline my centimeters. I know that centimeters is at the top. And now the question is, how do I get from 4 to 5? Previously, I said that if I'm going from a larger to smaller number, I'm multiplying by a number less than 1. Now I'm going from a smaller number to a larger number. So this number must be greater than 1 that I'm multiplying by. So I'm going to divide 5 and 4. So 5 divided by 4 should give me the number that I'm looking for. That number is going to be 1.25. Whatever I do to the top, I'm going to do to the bottom. And my answer here should be 6.25 kilometers. I'm boxing this as my final answer. Please remember that you must annotate. You need to understand what it is you're being asked to find and what information you've been given. Had I wrote that I was finding the actual here for problem 1, my answer would be wrong. Please make sure that you've identified what the question is asking you to find. Question 1 asks me for centimeters. Question 2 asks me for kilometers. Same thing here. This represents the drawing, and this represents the actual. I want to keep everything aligned. Drawing with drawing, actual with actual. All right? Please make sure that you come to class prepared with the notes. Please make sure I'm looking to see that you're naming that we're annotating, that you're naming that we're reading, that we're creating a known and unknown key, that we are setting up the proportion, that we are using the scale. I need you to identify when did I say I'm multiplying by a number greater than 1 versus less than 1. These are the things that I'm going to be looking for your note taking. I hope you have an amazing day. And I can't wait to see you, or evening rather, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow with your notes in hand. Have an amazing night.